Chapter 4788. Nowadays, some of the larger fragments of the continent were extremely prosperous. All kinds of divine herbs were everywhere, and all kinds of living beings were born. Especially the races of the universe, they all migrated to the universe ruins, bringing all kinds of desolate beasts with them. They multiplied very quickly in the universe ruins. In just a little more than 1,000 years, the shadows of these desolate beasts could be seen on many fragments. Furthermore, major-level god medicines and Urwild's gems were constantly being produced from the fragments of the continent. The two of them explored a few fragments and found more than 100,000 chaos crystals each. To Gu Chongfeng, the main divine elixir and the primordial crystal were of no use. He gave them to Lu Ming and Lu Ming accepted them without hesitation. In a few months, the home planets of the Battle Saint tribe, the Buddha race, the Demon race, and the Spirit race finally moved to the territory near the Heaven Destroyer base. They formed a triangle with the Heaven Destroyer base and the Evil Demon's base, so they could support each other. At this time, Lu Ming and Gu Chongfeng finally returned to the Heaven Destroyer base. After returning to the Heaven Destroyer base, Lu Ming continued to cultivate. Time passed quickly. In the blink of an eye, 200 years had passed. After 200 years of cultivation, Lu Ming finally cultivated the battle formula to perfection. He could increase his combat strength by 9 times and achieve a 100% success rate. This undoubtedly made Lu Ming's combat strength more stable. He wouldn't be unable to activate the battle formula because of a sudden battle, so his combat strength couldn't be at its peak. At this time, Lu Ming gave the battle formula to Xian Yanqing. With Xian Yanqing's current cultivation and talent, he quickly got the hang of it and cultivated to 4 times his combat strength. This made Xian Yanqing's combat strength even more powerful. When facing the strongest Lord of Heaven, he could be more at ease. Unfortunately, Lu Ming still didn't have a clue about the 3000th ancient secret skill. Even though he spent a lot of time comprehending it, he still didn't have a clue. He felt that the road ahead was boundless. It seemed that he had already comprehended the ancient secret technique, and the road ahead had already been cut off. He knew that this was an illusion, because the master of the primordial divine court had successfully comprehended the 3000 ancient secret arts. There was a precedent for this. Furthermore, he could sense from the primeval godstone that the combination of primeval secret arts was not limited to this. After all, the secret arts he had comprehended later on were quite different from the ones the archaic divine court had comprehended. I wonder if cultivating the archaic secret art created by the master of the archaic divine court will allow me to complete the 3000 archaic secret arts. Lu Ming's eyes suddenly lit up. He had relied on himself to comprehend the ancient secret arts. Now that he had reached a bottleneck, he might as well directly cultivate the ancient secret arts left behind by the archaic divine court lord. Thinking of this, Lu Ming immediately began his search. First it was in the Heaven Destroyer. Then it went to the 4 races to search for it. Finally, in the Battle Saint tribe and the Buddha race, he found an ancient secret art that he had never cultivated before. Lu Ming immediately started to comprehend it. After that, he refined one of the ancient secret arts into a secret art rune, wanting to fuse it into one of his cells. But this time he encountered a strong resistance. The secret art rune was unable to fuse into the cell and was repelled. Why is this the case? Fuse it for me. Lu Ming roared. He used taboo force to push the secret art rune, wanting to forcefully fuse it into the cell. But at the next moment, with a bang, the cell directly exploded. Of course, given Lu Ming's recovery ability, he could instantly recover from the explosion of a cell. However, Lu Ming's expression was somewhat gloomy. No, this was completely impossible. The secret art rune couldn't be fused into the cell at all. Lu Ming finally gave up. Could it be that I have to comprehend it myself? Lu Ming contemplated. Maybe, when he was still far away from comprehending the 3000 ancient secret arts, he could comprehend and fuse them. But now, he was only 1 step away from comprehending the 3000 secret arts. This was the only explanation. It seemed that he could only rely on himself to comprehend them. Lu Ming could only comprehend the 3000th ancient secret art by himself. In the past 200 years, most of the chaos crystals obtained by the Heaven Destroyer and the demons had been given to Lu Ming. There were about 100 million of them. To be able to obtain 100 million chaos crystals in 200 years was definitely a large number. It was many times faster than before. In the past, it would have taken a long time to accumulate 100 million chaos crystals. Before Fei Huang sealed herself, she had given Lu Ming 200 million chaos crystals. That was the accumulation of Fei Huang and other experts over a long period of time. It was measured in stellar years. How could 200 years be compared to a stellar year? However, 200 million chaos crystals was just a drop in the bucket for Lu Ming. It wouldn't be of much use at all. At this rate, it would take at least 10,000 years to gather more than 5 billion chaos crystals. 10,000 years later, the origin tribulation would be over and the daylily would be gone. Yi Immortal would probably have broken through to the peak of the Almighty Realm. However, Lu Ming had no other choice. He could only focus on comprehending the 3,000th secret art, hoping to trigger a qualitative change and increase his combat strength. However, at this time, something big happened in the universe that attracted the attention of all forces. The location of the incident was the Dark Pit Demon Mountain. The Dark Pit Demon Mountain was a place that left a deep impression on Lu Ming. Back then, in order to participate in the Heavenly Soldier assessment in the Heavenly Palace, he needed a wisp of dark yin qi. He chased after Yin Jioling and came to the Dark Pit Demon Mountain. In the end, he fought with the battle god Yuan 1 and triggered the Domain of Ascension. The Dark Pit Demon Mountain was a famous forbidden area in the universe. No one who entered the Dark Pit could come out. Only Yin Jioling could come out, because he was possessed by the Dark Yin Qi. This time, the Dark Pit Demon Mountain underwent a huge change. Countless Dark Yin Qi rushed out from the Dark Pit. The Dark Yin Qi covered the sky and the earth, spreading out from the Dark Pit Demon Mountain. And the spreading speed was very fast. Galaxies and star fields were shrouded by the Dark Yin Qi. All the creatures that were shrouded by the Dark Yin Qi were invaded by the Dark Yin Qi and turned into ferocious monsters. They killed each other, and even rushed out of the Dark Yin Qi to attack others. For a time, the vast universe fell into a catastrophe. Countless creatures turned into Dark Yin Qi monsters. In just a few decades, nearly 1/3 of the universe's territory was covered by the Dark Yin Qi and became an area of Dark Yin Qi. Moreover, the Dark Yin Qi continued to spread to the surroundings. If this continued, in less than 100 years, the entire universe and countless planets would be shrouded by the Dark Yin Qi. The big and small races in the universe migrated to the ruins of the universe. Those who couldn't could only wait for the arrival of despair. The Dark Pit Demon Mountain actually had such a change. What's inside? Lu Ming's face was uncertain. He thought of the Taishu dynasty. Although almost all of his relatives and friends were transferred to the Heaven Destroyer Station, the Taishu dynasty was the country left behind by Jingyu. He couldn't leave it alone and let it be swallowed by the Dark Yin Qi. Chapter 4789. Lu Ming planned to transfer the people of the Taishu dynasty to the Heaven Destroyer Station. Lu Ming didn't tell anyone. He secretly left the Heaven Destroyer Station and headed to the universe. Lu Ming broke the void and traveled at an extremely fast speed. It didn't take long for Lu Ming to arrive at the universe. As expected, Lu Ming looked into the distance. In front of him was endless darkness. The sky was filled with black fog that shrouded the vast universe. In the black fog, he could see streams of yin qi moving around. Roar. At the same time, he could also hear roars. Those were the creatures that had been devoured by the yin qi. They had completely lost their consciousness and turned into yin qi monsters. Lu Ming circulated the forbidden energy to his eyes. Through the black fog, he could see many yin qi monsters killing each other. These yin qi monsters had different cultivation levels. Some had just broken through to the immortal state. Some were true gods, heavenly gods, divine kings, divine lords, etc. There were from the empty god realm to the divine emperor realm. As for the stronger ones, they would run away before the baleful yin qi arrived. These yin qi monsters were killing each other. The stronger ones would kill the weaker ones. They could absorb the yin qi of the weaker ones for their own use and improve their strength. I can't believe this can happen. If this continues, even if there aren't any powerful beings that turn into yin qi monsters, terrifying monsters will be born from this kind of killing and devouring. Lu Ming's heart was a little heavy. After thinking for a while, Lu Ming decided to enter the Yin and go to the Dark Pit Demon Mountain to take a look. He wanted to see what was in the Dark Pit Demon Mountain. With the forbidden energy covering his body, Lu Ming turned into a stream of light and rushed into the Yin. Look, that person dares to rush into the Yin. How dare he? Isn't he afraid of being devoured by the Yin? Someone exclaimed. There were some other people watching in the surroundings. They were all experts of some big clans in the universe. There was no lack of divine emperors. However, even divine emperors didn't dare to enter the Yin. What astonishing speed. That's definitely a divine master expert. He should have come from the ruins of the universe. During this period of time, the top 10 tribes, including the Heavenly Human Tribe, Heaven Destroyer, and the Abyss Devils, have all sent powerful beings here. Of course, this is something that will affect the universe. These people were discussing. Not long after Lu Ming charged into the baleful Yin, several streams of baleful Yin rushed towards Lu Ming, wanting to devour Lu Ming and possess him. Lu Ming stretched out his hand and made a grabbing motion. A huge hand formed and covered the entire area, directly grabbing the few strands of baleful Yin. No matter how hard these streams of Yin tried to escape, they could not escape from Lu Ming's palm. This baleful Yin is very different from the baleful Yin that was born in the universe in the past. The extreme Yin energy is extremely dense. Is this the baleful Yin that emanates from the Dark Pit Demon Mountain? Lu Ming whispered. With a flick of his finger, layers of energy sealed the few strands of baleful Yin and kept them in a jade bottle. He would keep it first and bring it back for the Heaven Destroyer or the Abyss Devils to study. Lu Ming continued to move forward. Roar! There were roars all around. Many baleful Yin monsters rushed towards Lu Ming and launched a frenzied attack on Lu Ming. However, these baleful Yin monsters were nothing in Lu Ming's eyes. He did not even bother to attack them. He just charged past them. Wherever Lu Ming went, there was a terrifying force that tore the baleful Yin monsters apart, turning them into extreme Yin energy and dissipating. There were no baleful Yin monsters that could stop Lu Ming. In the end, Lu Ming directly used the greater teleportation technique and kept on moving towards the Dark Pit Demon Mountain. Lu Ming realized that the closer he got to the Dark Pit Demon Mountain, the denser the baleful Yin was, and the stronger the baleful Yin monsters were. There were even God Emperor realm baleful Yin monsters. These baleful Yin monsters continue to kill and devour each other. It won't be long before God Emperor realm baleful Yin monsters appear. No, they might have already appeared. Lu Ming pondered. After a period of time, Lu Ming finally got close to the Dark Pit Demon Mountain. The Dark Pit Demon Mountain did not change much from before. However, there was a huge black vortex at the top of the mountain. This was the location of the Dark Pit. This black vortex led to the Dark Pit. From time to time, a few baleful Yin would rush out from the black vortex. Heavenly Human Tribe and Quasi-Sage Tribe. Lu Ming's eyes moved. In other directions, Lu Ming saw figures flashing. They were from the Heavenly Human Tribe and Quasi-Sage Tribe. Obviously, the Heavenly Human Tribe and Quasi-Sage Tribe were not at ease with such a change in the Dark Pit Demon Mountain. They would definitely send people to investigate. Roar! Roar! Suddenly, a few terrifying roars came from the Dark Pit Demon Mountain. A few figures rushed out from the Dark Pit Demon Mountain and charged toward the people from the Quasi-Sage Tribe and Heavenly Human Tribe. Another two figures charged toward Lu Ming. Divine Master Realm Baleful Yin Monsters. Lu Ming's eyes flashed. These baleful Yin monsters that rushed out from the Dark Pit Demon Mountain had indeed reached the Divine Master Realm. The two Divine Master Realm baleful Yin monsters, one on the left and one on the right, surrounded Lu Ming. The eyes of these two baleful Yin monsters were actually flickering with a cunning light. They had spiritual intelligence. These two baleful Yin monsters were not like other baleful Yin monsters that had no spiritual intelligence at all. They actually had spiritual intelligence. Perhaps after the baleful Yin monsters evolved into the Divine Master Realm, they would have spiritual intelligence. That was why they did not continue to kill each other. However, the Divine Master Realm baleful Yin monsters were still not in Lu Ming's eyes. Swoosh! Lu Ming pointed two fingers in succession. Two finger forces burst out, and shot toward the two baleful monsters. Lu Ming was very powerful. He could strike at any time. His power was astonishingly strong and his speed was astonishingly fast. Bam! Bam! The two baleful monsters directly exploded and dissipated into the power of extreme Yin. On the other side, the Quasi-Saint tribe and the Heavenly Human tribe had also finished their battle and killed the baleful monsters. Those who dared to come here to investigate were all top experts. There was no lack of peak Divine Master existences. It was naturally easy for them to deal with these ordinary Divine Master realm baleful monsters. How dare you kill our baleful warriors? You're courting death. At this moment, a furious roar came from the pitch-black vortex. Then the vortex's fog churned. Accompanied by the roars of ferocious beasts, several figures appeared. These figures were thin and their bodies were like illusory green smoke, constantly twisting and turning. They sat on a few strange ferocious beasts and looked outside with lightning eyes. This is Lu Ming, the Heavenly Human tribe, and the Quasi-Saint tribe were all shocked. These figures had clearly come out of the sewer. There were living creatures in the sewer? How could this be? Living creatures in the Forbidden Land. According to the ancient records, there are terrifying living creatures hibernating in the Forbidden Land. All of this is true. They are about to come out. At this moment, an elder from the Quasi-Saint tribe screamed and retreated. What do you mean? A heavenly human existence shouted. Chapter 4790. Kill. At this moment, a figure in the vortex shouted. His aura exploded, and waves of extreme energy burst out, causing the temperature of the starry sky to plummet. He rode a ferocious beast and rushed out of the vortex. Lu Ming finally saw the other party's appearance. Their bodies were illusory and not made of flesh and blood. They seemed to be souls, but they also seemed to be formed entirely by energy. They held spears in their hands and rode three-headed hounds. They emitted a terrifying aura. Swoosh! One of the creatures in the dark pit attacked. He thrust his spear, and the extreme energy whistled toward the Heavenly Human. Peak Divine Master. The moment the other party attacked, everyone sensed that his cultivation was at the peak of the Divine Master level. The Heavenly Human did not dare to be careless. A peak Divine Master quickly attacked, and the extreme power of heaven erupted. Boom! Their attacks collided, sending shockwaves everywhere. Then the peak Divine Master of the Heavenly Human tribe was sent flying backward. His body was enveloped by a layer of dark energy, and his body was almost frozen. As for the creature in the pit, its body only swayed slightly. What powerful combat strength! Lu Ming was shocked. The combat strength of the creatures in the dark pit was astonishing. At the Divine Master level, the Heavenly Human race was extremely talented, and few races in the universe could compare to them. If one was not a monster, it would be difficult to fight against the Heavenly Human race. However, the powerful Heavenly Human race was completely at a disadvantage against the creatures in the dark pit. Could the creature in the dark pit be the prodigy of the other race? Or could any one of them have such powerful combat strength? If it was the latter, it would be terrifying. Boom! Boom! The other creatures in the dark pit also erupted with powerful auras, and they were ready to attack. Retreat! Retreat first. The Heavenly Human race and Quasi-Sage race all retreated. After all, this was the Dark Pit Demon Mountain. Who knew how many creatures there were in the Dark Pit? It was unwise to fight the creatures in the Dark Pit here. The people of the Heavenly Human tribe and the Quasi-Saint tribe retreated. Lu Ming moved and also retreated rapidly. He was just observing the situation. There was no need to fight with these creatures of unknown origin. Humph, if the time is right, none of them will leave. A creature in the dark pit snorted and did not chase after them. Instead, it turned around and returned to the dark vortex, disappearing. Lu Ming flew all the way and soon left the area shrouded by the energy. There's actually a living being in the dark pit. What is its origin? Logically speaking, this dark pit Devil Mountain should have been left behind from the previous era. However, the universe has undergone many eras, Lu Ming pondered. He had many questions. The universe's starry skies had experienced the changes of epochs. The universe had evolved, the heavens and earth had been reborn, and the universe's laws had been reborn. Could this dark crater Demon Mountain, really be an item from the previous epoch? Had it been perfectly preserved after experiencing the universe's evolution? If it was true, then wouldn't the living beings in the dark pit Demon Mountain be living beings from the great desolate continent of the previous era? The living beings on the Eldritch continent had been passed down to this day? This was definitely big news. Lu Ming thought of the heavenly human race and the demons. The heavenly human race and the demons were living beings from the previous era. Furthermore, they were servants of the human race. They should not be of a high level. Since they could pass down the legacy, it was not impossible for other living beings to survive. This also explained why the other party was so powerful. They could suppress the heavenly human race in a battle of the same level. I wonder how many people there are. It's really an eventful time. Lu Ming sighed. The universe's situation was complicated enough. Now that there was a creature in the dark pit Demon Mountain, the situation would undoubtedly become more complicated. This made Lu Ming feel a sense of urgency. He was eager to improve his abilities. He felt that the future situation would become more and more complicated. Only with powerful strength could he protect himself. He quickly headed towards the Taishu dynasty. The Taishu dynasty was located in a remote area and was not affected by the dark pit Demon Mountain. Moreover, due to the lack of information, they didn't know what was happening in the universe. They continued to develop and cultivate steadily like before. Lu Ming's return to the Taishu dynasty naturally caused a sensation. However, Lu Ming couldn't be bothered to talk nonsense. He went straight to the point and told them about the situation in the universe. He also recorded the scene of the Yin energy, shrouding the Taishu dynasty with the rest Shadow Stone, and showed it to the higher-ups of the Taishu dynasty. After the higher-ups of the Taishu dynasty saw it, they were naturally shocked. This kind of cosmic disaster was simply beyond their imagination. For a moment, they were all at a loss. In the end, they all pinned their hopes on Lu Ming. In their opinion, Lu Ming was the legend of the Taishu dynasty. Lu Ming also told them the purpose of his visit. Then, the Taishu dynasty immediately took action and gathered the creatures from all over. Not long after, Lu Ming began to take action. He used the Chaos Ring to collect a large number of creatures. This was a huge project. The Taishu dynasty had a vast territory and countless creatures. With Lu Ming's current cultivation, it took him more than half a year to collect a portion of the creatures of the Taishu dynasty into the Chaos Ring. Yes, only a portion. Although the Taishu dynasty was just a mediocre force and didn't have many experts, there were still countless creatures on all the planets. Lu Ming couldn't take them all away. Even if he took them all away, the Heaven Destroyer base wouldn't be able to accommodate them. He could only take away a portion of the more important ones. As for the other creatures, Lu Ming couldn't care so much. There were too many of them. He couldn't save them all even if he wanted to. With the creatures of the Taishu dynasty, Lu Ming returned to the Heaven Destroyer base, found a fragment of the continent, and released these creatures. Not long after Lu Ming returned, he received a message from Lion. Lu Ming went to Lion's residence. When he arrived, he found that Rongjin, Tangjian, and the others were also there. Lu Ming, you're here. I have something important to discuss with you. Lion said with a grin. What is it? Lu Ming asked curiously. It's about the Forbidden Area. Lion said. Forbidden Area? Do you already know that there are creatures in the Dark Pit Demon Mountain? Lu Ming couldn't help but ask. What? There are creatures in the Dark Pit Demon Mountain? Lion and the others' faces suddenly changed. You don't know? Lu Ming asked doubtfully. Lion, Rongjin, and the others shook their heads. It's like this. I happened to go to the Dark Pit Demon Mountain during this period of time. Immediately, Lu Ming told them what he saw in the Dark Pit Demon Mountain in detail. After listening, Lion, Rongjin, Tangjian, and the others' faces changed and became extremely solemn. There's actually such a thing. There are actually creatures in the pit. It's said that the Dark Pit Demon Mountain has existed for countless years. It has existed since the universe first appeared. Could it be a creature from the previous era? Tangjian guessed. He and Lu Ming had the same thought. Chapter 4791. That's possible. After all, the Dark Pit Demon Mountain has existed since the primordial god appeared in the universe. It's just that no one dared to enter the Dark Pit. Anyone who entered died. Lion also said with a solemn expression. Although Lion had lived for countless years and was older than many origins, he had never heard of living beings in the dark pit. If you don't know about the dark pit demon mountain, then what is the forbidden area you mentioned? Lu Ming asked curiously. It's the primordial divine mountain. Lion said. The primordial divine mountain? That terrifying forbidden area in the universe ruins? Lu Ming was shocked and could not help but blurt out. Lu Ming had naturally heard of the primordial divine mountain. Anyone who ventured into the universe ruins would be warned to stay away from the primordial divine mountain. That was because it was a terrifying forbidden area. Anyone who entered would die without exception. In the ruins of the universe or the universe, there were many places that were called forbidden zones. However, the truly terrifying forbidden zones were relatively rare. There was only one in the universe ruins, and that was the Dark Pit Demon Mountain. There were more forbidden areas in the universe ruins, and the primordial divine mountain was one of them. A forbidden ground like that was extremely terrifying. Let alone divine masters, even reciprocity realm existences would probably die if they entered it. The dark pit of the Dark Pit Demon Mountain was mysterious. No one knew what was inside. The greatest danger of the primordial divine mountain was the void beasts. That was because there were 4 terrifying void beasts residing in the primordial divine mountain. When Lu Ming had just stepped into the ruins of the universe, he had once encountered a void beast. It had chased after him until he had nowhere to run. In the end, he was lucky enough to encounter an ancient warship that was covered with strange black fog. That was how he managed to escape the calamity. As for the void beast, Lu Ming suspected that it was not a mature one because its size did not match the legends. Legend had it that the void beasts were even larger than stars. Mature spatial beasts were extremely terrifying. Even reciprocity experts would not be able to fend them off if they encountered them. The primordial divine mountain was guarded by 4 void beasts. It was undoubtedly a forbidden area among forbidden areas. In the past, no one dared to approach it. That's right. Recently, someone discovered that there are origin-grade divine herbs around the primordial divine mountain. Lion explained. Origin-level divine medicine. Lu Ming's eyes flashed. Source-grade divine medicine was very mysterious. Even Lu Ming had one. Source-grade divine herbs could condense medicine spirits like living creatures. As for top-notch source-grade divine medicines and medicine spirits could move about freely. Many people speculate that it should be an extremely top-level soul-level divine medicine. Divine medicines and medicine spirits can run around everywhere. That's why it was discovered around the fragment where the primal divine mountain is located. And there's more than one. There might be many soul-level divine medicines in the primal divine mountain, and there might even be other treasures with origin imprints. It might even contain a huge amount of chaos crystals. Tang Jian said. Lu Ming's eyes shone brightly. This was very likely. The primordial divine mountain actually had 4 void beasts guarding it. This place was definitely a very important place in the last epoch. No one had ever ventured deep into it. It would not be strange if it contained a huge amount of treasures. What Lu Ming needed the most right now was the Great Desolate Crystal. Or it could be a main-level divine medicine. Only these 2 things could allow his cultivation to break through quickly. And the primal divine mountain might have these 2 things. This made Lu Ming very interested. Will the void behemoths be affected by the origin tribulation? Lu Ming asked. That's what I'm going to say next. Although the void beasts are special, they can't withstand the origin tribulation. They can only withstand it a little more than ordinary existences at origin realm or above. But after so many years, they can't withstand it anymore. After many investigations, we've confirmed that the void beasts of the primal divine mountain have fallen into a deep slumber. They definitely won't wake up for several thousand years. Now, all sides are preparing to send experts to explore the primal divine mountain. Heaven Destroyer is also preparing to send a team into the primal divine mountain. We want you to lead the team. What do you think? Lion said. Of course. Lu Ming nodded without hesitation. Heaven Destroyer was on the same boat as him. There was no reason not to help him. Moreover, most of the primal crystals obtained by Heaven Destroyer and the demons would be given to him first. He had even less reason to refuse. All right, then it's settled. We'll set off tomorrow, Lion said. Gu Changfeng had to stay at Heaven Destroyer's base and head to the Primal Divine Mountain. With Lu Ming's help, their chances of success would be much higher. Lu Ming's battle prowess was obvious to all. In addition, Lu Ming had Qiuqiu and Gu Mo, two of the strongest Lord of Heaven, with him. A day passed in the blink of an eye. On the second day, Lu Ming set off with his team. This time, Heaven Destroyer sent over 100 people to follow Lu Ming. These people were all experts. Even the weakest among them was at the 7th layer of the Divine Lord Realm. There were also 9 peak Divine Lord Realm experts. Coupled with Lu Ming, their battle prowess could be said to be very strong. They directly flew toward the Primal Divine Mountain. The Primal Divine Mountain was located relatively close to Heaven Destroyer's base. It was also relatively far from the Quasi-Saint tribe and the Heavenly Human tribe's territory. About 10 days later, they arrived at the periphery of the Primal Divine Mountain. The Primal Divine Mountain was actually located on a fragment of a continent. This fragment of a continent was very large, and was not smaller than the Thousand Autumn battlefield. In the center of this fragment of a continent, there was a continuous mountain range. It was incomparably huge and could be seen from outside the fragment of the continent. The main reason was that this mountain range was emitting a dazzling light. This light was so dazzling that even Divine Lord Realm Existence's vision would be greatly limited. They would not be able to see the exact appearance of the Primal Divine Mountain. They could only barely see an outline. As for what was on the Primal Divine Mountain, they could not see it clearly. Perhaps Origin Realm Existences could see it clearly. However, Origin Realm Existences did not dare to approach it at all. Once they did, they would be attacked by void beasts. Let's go, Lu Ming shouted. He took the lead and charged toward the fragment of the continent. The others followed. They were extremely alert. Their spiritual senses spread out in all directions as they constantly paid attention to their surroundings. Their speed was not very fast. After all, this was the Primal Divine Mountain, one of the most terrifying forbidden grounds in the universe. No one knew if there were any other dangers apart from void beasts. However, the situation was much better than they had imagined. They did not encounter any danger along the way. They did not encounter any living creatures either. Look, that's a divine herb, someone exclaimed. The others also saw it because the dense fragrance of the divine herb was just too alluring. In the forest ahead of them, there was a large patch of fiery red divine herbs growing. Everyone rushed over. They are all Emperor-grade divine herbs. There are thousands of them. Many people gasped in shock. Chapter 4792. It was not surprising that there were Emperor-level divine herbs. In the past, when the universe had not undergone great changes, even the universe could be born. However, it was very rare for thousands of Emperor-level divine herbs to grow in such a place. It was extremely shocking. It was indeed a forbidden land that had never been explored before. It was definitely extraordinary. Many people's eyes burned with passion. To be able to find so many Emperor-level divine herbs at once, this continent must contain main or even source-level divine herbs. Previously, someone had seen many source-level divine herbs running around. It should be true. Let's collect them first. When we return to the base, we will discuss the distribution, Lu Ming said. Everyone nodded, and then began to move. In a few moments, several thousand Emperor-grade godly herbs were collected. Then they continued to move forward, and found a large number of divine herbs. Most of them were Emperor-level and Emperor-level divine herbs. However, their eyes lit up. When they went deeper into the continent fragment, there would definitely be main divine herbs. A day later, they were getting closer and closer to the primordial divine mountain. The dazzling light made it difficult for them to open their eyes. They had to constantly circulate divine power to their eyes to resist the dazzling light. At this moment, they finally discovered master-grade godly medicines. Moreover, there were 3 of them. This made them excited. The energy of a main divine herb was at least equivalent to the energy of 10,000 chaos crystals. The higher-level divine herbs had more energy. After traveling for a few more hours, they had already obtained more than 50 stalks of main-grade divine herbs. This was simply a treasure land. It contained endless treasures that could be picked up at will. That is, at this time they saw a huge beast crawling on the ground in front of them. This beast was covered in scales. It was extremely huge. From afar, it looked like a planet on the ground. Void beast. Everyone looked at each other, and a word appeared in their hearts. That was right. This was definitely a void beast. Fortunately, the void beast was already asleep. It lay there with its eyes closed and did not move. The forest where the void beast is extremely rich in energy. It probably contains a lot of divine herbs. Someone said. They could feel that the forest where the void beast was too rich. It was even richer than the places they had been to before. They could imagine that it would definitely produce a large number of divine herbs. Let's go and take a look. Lu Ming spoke. He was very decisive as he headed in the direction of the void beast. The others looked at each other and followed suit. In any case, the void behemoth had already fallen into a deep slumber. But soon, they had no choice but to stop. That was because the void behemoth was emitting a terrifying aura. The closer they got to the void behemoth, the more terrifying the aura became. It was as if countless mountains were pressing down on them. It was also like sharp blades cutting into their bodies. They felt a stabbing pain. I can't. If I continue, my body will be torn apart. The face of a seventh-layer Divine Master expert was deathly pale. His entire body trembled, and blood seeped out of the corner of his mouth. Retreat! Lu Ming bellowed and quickly retreated with his men. The terror of the void beast was beyond his imagination. He had already fallen into a deep slumber, but his aura was still so terrifying that it could tear apart a divine master. Lu Ming had a feeling that even if it was him, he would not be able to get close to the void beast. Otherwise, his body and soul would be torn apart by that terrifying aura. This void beast was many times stronger than the one he had encountered before. It seemed that the void beast he had encountered before was not a mature one. If it was a mature one, Lu Ming would not have been able to escape. What is the origin of this void beast? It has been wandering the ruins of the universe since ancient times. Could it be some kind of creature left behind from the last era? Lu Ming pondered. He could not figure it out and felt a headache coming on. He had thought that once he reached the Divine Master realm and entered the ranks of the top experts of the universe, he would be able to understand the secrets of the universe. But now he realized that as his cultivation increased and his understanding of the universe increased, he had more and more questions. He realized that there were many more secrets in the universe than he had imagined. But many things seemed to point to the primeval continent of the last era. But that era was a missing piece of history, and there was too little information available. Maybe I'll have to find an opportunity to ask Zixian, Ying Kong and the others. Lu Ming muttered to himself. The fiend demons were creatures from the last era, so they might know a lot of secrets. They retreated and distanced themselves from the void beast. They went around this area and continued to head toward the primeval divine mountain. When they arrived there, they realized that the energy on this continent seemed to be coming from the primeval divine mountain. It came from the primeval divine mountain. The closer they were to the primeval divine mountain, the more energy there was. Therefore, the closer they were to the primeval divine mountain, the more advanced the divine medicines were. So, as the source of energy, how many treasures would there be on the primeval divine mountain? It was probably unimaginable. Thinking of this, many people's breathing became heavy. After a while, they finally got close to the primeval divine mountain. When they got closer, they finally saw the outline of the primeval divine mountain. It was a mountain range with endless peaks. There were at least dozens of huge mountains, and they were extremely majestic. The mountain range was lush and full of vitality. There were countless flowers and trees growing on it. Suddenly, a small sapling appeared on the ground in front of them. The sapling was less than a meter tall. There were 6 golden fruits growing on it. Each fruit was only the size of a fist. They swayed on the ground and gave off a dense fragrance. Above the sapling was an even smaller sapling. It was formed from energy and it was running back and forth. An origin divine medicine. Everyone's eyes immediately burned with desire. This really was an origin divine medicine. Moreover, it was definitely of a very high grade among origin divine medicines. This was because the other party was running. For example, the origin divine medicines Lu Ming had obtained before were rooted in a certain place and would not run. However, this one had clearly just emerged from the ground. The origin divine medicine seemed to have discovered Lu Ming's group. It turned around and ran madly into the depths of the primeval divine mountain. After it, this origin divine medicine is priceless. It can help people reach reciprocity. Many people's eyes burned with desire. Unable to suppress their greed, they chased after the origin divine medicine. Even Lu Ming chased after the source level elixir. However, the origin divine medicine was extremely fast. It was like a bolt of lightning. Lu Ming's group could not catch up for a while. Instead, the distance between them widened. After a while, they lost track of the origin divine medicine. Damn it. Many people were very unwilling. That's the heavenly human race. Suddenly, they saw a group of people flying over from another direction. They were the experts of the heavenly human race. Chapter 4793. In another direction, a group of heavenly human tribe members rushed over. There were about 100 of them. Soon the heavenly human tribe members arrived. The Heaven Destroyer members were on full alert, ready for a big battle. Apparently, the heavenly human tribe members had also noticed Lu Ming and the others. They stopped at a distance. 100 battle Ju Tian, they're all familiar faces. Lu Ming's eyes flashed. The two leaders of the heavenly human tribe were two of the four most powerful Lord of Heaven, the Lord of Heaven of 100 battles, and the Lord of Heaven of Annihilation. In addition, there were two burly figures beside them. They were two modified primitive divine spirit puppets. When they attacked the Heaven Destroyer base, there were a total of 4 primitive divine spirit puppets. They were the products of the heavenly human tribe's endless experiments. They were filled with all kinds of terrifying power, and their combat power was also at the level of the most powerful Lord of Heaven. Their bodies were extremely huge before, but now they had shrunk and were only a little bigger than an ordinary person. Lu Ming, the Lord of Heaven of 100 battles, and the Lord of Heaven of Absolute Heaven also noticed Lu Ming. Their pupils shrank rapidly, and they were frightened. They instinctively wanted to retreat. The battle at the Heaven Destroyer base had a great impact on them. Lu Ming's terrifying combat power had been deeply imprinted in their hearts. The two most powerful Lord of Heaven of 100 battles were the same, and the other members of the heavenly human tribe were even more so. They felt cold all over, and their faces were pale. Even if there were 4 most powerful Lord of Heaven in front of them, they couldn't help but feel afraid. In the battle at the Heaven Destroyer base, 5 most powerful Lord of Heaven of 100 battles had besieged Lu Ming at the beginning. What had happened to them in the end? Don't be afraid, everyone. The ancestral patriarch speculated that Lu Ming's combat power was most likely due to some kind of treasure or secret technique that could cause great damage. There might be a huge sequela, so he can't keep using it. At this moment, the Extermination Lord of Heaven shouted loudly to stabilize the morale of the army. After the initial panic, his heart also calmed down. After the battle at the Heaven Destroyer station, Ye Immortal speculated that it was impossible for Lu Ming to maintain such a powerful state forever. This could be seen from the fact that the Heaven Destroyer didn't launch a counterattack against the heavenly human tribe. If Lu Ming was really that powerful, together with Gu Changfeng, they would be able to fight back, but Heaven Destroyer didn't do anything, which meant a lot. Of course, this was all just speculation. Even the Ye Immortal couldn't be sure. Therefore, they didn't dare to continue attacking the Heaven Destroyer, because they didn't know Lu Ming's exact combat strength. Even so, the people of the heavenly human tribe were still deeply afraid of Lu Ming. They still distanced themselves from Lu Ming and the others. However, Lu Ming and the others did not attack. It wasn't that Lu Ming didn't want to, but that he really didn't have the strength to do so. In total, the other party had the combat strength of 4 Lord of Heaven. As for Lu Ming, he had Bone Demon and Qiuqiu with him. He only had the combat power of the 3 strongest Heaven Lords. In particular, the 2 primitive divine spirit puppets didn't have any intelligence. Qiuqiu's illusory light beam was ineffective against such puppets, which made them even more difficult to deal with. For a moment, the 2 sides were in a stalemate. He didn't make a move. Could it be that Lu Ming really can't unleash that kind of combat strength? The extermination Lord of Heaven and the Lord of Heaven of 100 Battles looked at each other and said the same thing in their hearts. Of course, they didn't dare to risk their lives to try it. They just muttered in their hearts and were still very wary of Lu Ming. It's really lively. Did you guys get the source-level divine medicine? A deep voice sounded, and another group of people arrived. It was the Quasi-Saint tribe. There were about 100 people in the Quasi-Saint tribe. Most of them were middle-aged men or old men, but their auras were extremely deep and vigorous. Especially the few people in the lead. Although their cultivation seemed to be at the peak of the Divine Master realm, they gave off an extremely strong pressure. Even Lu Ming felt a strong pressure, similar to the pressure given by the extermination Lord of Heaven. Could it be that these people have the combat strength of the Lord of Heaven? Lu Ming's heart stirred. Lu Ming had never dared to underestimate the Quasi-Saint tribe. All along, the Quasi-Saint tribe had been mysterious and unfathomable. It wouldn't be strange if a few of them had the combat strength of the Lord of Heaven. You are Lu Ming. The Quasi-Saint tribe's people swept their gazes over the Heaven Destroyer and the Heavenly Human tribe before finally landing on Lu Ming. Their expressions immediately became very grave. Lu Ming had killed 3 of the Heavenly Human tribe's strongest powerhouses of the Lord of Heaven. This news had long spread throughout the universe. How could the Quasi-Saint tribe not have heard of it? After seeing Lu Ming, they immediately became vigilant. Everyone, we've just tracked down a stock of source-grade divine herb. Did you guys obtain it? A man from the Quasi-Saint tribe asked loudly. No, we also followed a divine medicine and came here not long ago. Lu Ming said. It's the same for us. We were just following a soul-grade divine herb and arrived here. When we arrived, the Heaven Exterminating Army was already here. The Lord of Heaven of Annihilation followed with a crafty glint in his eyes. What he meant was that they had arrived later. When they arrived, the Heavenly Extermination Troop had already arrived. As for whether the source-grade divine medicine that the Quasi-Saint tribe was tracking had fallen into the hands of the Heavenly Extermination Troop, they didn't know. Haha, you don't have to sow discord here. I believe that everyone from the Quasi-Saint tribe has their own judgment. Lu Ming sneered in response. The burly man leading the group from the Quasi-Saint race rolled his eyes and said, in that case, both of you are chasing after a source-grade divine herb. May I ask, what does the source-grade divine herb look like? There was nothing to hide. Lu Ming and the Lord of Heaven of Annihilation said it separately. The Lord of Heaven of Annihilation usually appeared on the Heavenly Human tribe's side. This was because the Lord of Heaven of 100 Battles wasn't good with words and schemes, while the Lord of Heaven of Annihilation was better at it. According to what you said, there are at least 3 extremely high-grade source-level divine medicines in this area. The eyes of the Quasi-Saint tribe's leader lit up. Lu Ming's eyes also flickered, and the others were even more fervent. This kind of source-level divine medicine that could run was of an extremely high grade, and had astonishing effects. Even Origin Realm existences would fight over it with their lives. Moreover, it had a miraculous effect on peak Divine Master existences. It could greatly increase the success rate of breaking through to the Origin Realm. Such a treasure was simply a priceless treasure. In the ruins of the universe, this kind of source-level divine medicine was extremely rare. And now, they saw 3 of them all at once. It would be strange if they weren't excited. 3 source-level divine medicines have disappeared in this area. There must be something strange about this area, the Quasi-Saint tribe's leader said. That's right, I think so too. Why don't the 3 of us search separately? It will belong to whoever finds it. How about it? The Lord of Heaven of Annihilation said. Good, I have the same idea, the Quasi-Saint tribe's leader said. Then they all looked at Lu Ming. At the scene, they were most afraid of Lu Ming. Chapter 4794. The Heavenly Human tribe and the Quasi-Sage tribe were most concerned about Lu Ming. If Lu Ming disagreed, they would have no choice but to join forces to deal with Lu Ming. Of course, I have no objections. Lu Ming smiled faintly. Okay, then let's split up and search. The man from the Quasi-Sage tribe nodded. Then, the 3 parties split up and each chose a direction to search. Strange, there are no divine herbs of other levels in this area. An elder from the Heaven Destroyer said. Lu Ming also frowned. This area was already inside the Prime Divine Mountain, So the energy was shockingly rich. Such rich energy should be able to nurture more divine herbs. However, they didn't find any divine herbs. Not to mention the main divine herbs. They didn't even find any low-level divine herbs. There are several extremely high-grade source-grade divine herbs in this area. They're probably affected by the source-grade divine herbs. Those divine herbs are too domineering. They've absorbed all the energy here, making it impossible for other divine herbs to survive. Bone Demon's voice sounded in his sea of consciousness. Lu Ming nodded, agreeing with this statement. Half a day later, they still found nothing. Boom. At this moment, a violent explosion suddenly came from another direction, and at the same time, dazzling rays of light filled the air. The rocks of the prime divine mountain were originally filled with dazzling rays of light, but this ray of light was even more dazzling. It could be seen even from far away. That's the direction the heavenly human tribe is searching. Did they find something? Maybe the source-level divine herbs are there. The people from the Heaven Destroyer discussed animatedly. Let's go and take a look. Lu Ming took the lead and rushed in that direction. They flew at full speed and soon approached the place where the rays of light filled the air. It was a cliff. At this moment, the cliff actually split into two from the middle, and a huge canyon appeared out of thin air. The dazzling rays of light burst out from the canyon. That's source-level divine herbs. And there are 3 of them, no 4 of them, no, 5 of them. Many people exclaimed. Lu Ming's heart was also shaken, and his eyes were burning. Indeed, he saw 5 stalks of origin-grade divine herbs. They were all different from one another. The 5 stalks of divine medicine were extremely fast. With a flash of light, they disappeared into the canyon. Swoosh, 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 with a flicker, the people of the quasi-saint race also arrived. We discovered this place first. We agreed that whoever discovered the soul-grade divine herb would get to keep it. You can leave now. The extermination Lord of Heaven shouted and stared vigilantly at the quasi-saint race and Heaven Destroyer. Those who see it have a share. Moreover, 5 stalks of extremely high-level origin-level divine medicines. Can your celestial race really swallow them all? Aren't you afraid of choking to death? The burly man from the quasi-saint race sneered. His eyes were full of mockery. He was not afraid of the celestial race at all. Lu Ming remained silent. Asking them to leave was too naive. Previously, when he said that it would belong to whoever found it, that was just a casual remark. No one would take it seriously. He believed that if Lu Ming and the others had found the source-level divine herb first, the heavenly human tribe would not have given up. Damn it! The people of the celestial race shouted angrily in their hearts. In the past, their celestial race was high and mighty, and no other race dared to disobey them. In the past 1,000 years, it had completely changed. The prestige of the celestial race was getting lower and lower. For example, the quasi-saint race did not put the celestial race in their eyes at all. Follow me into the canyon. The extermination Lord of Heaven shouted angrily, and took the lead to rush into the canyon. More than 100 experts of the celestial race followed closely behind. Let's go. Enter the canyon. The quasi-saint race and Heaven Destroyer immediately rushed in. However, after the experts of the 3 sides entered the canyon, they couldn't help but stop. The canyon was very wide, and the stone walls on both sides of the canyon were as smooth as a mirror as if they had been cut by a sharp blade. What moved them the most was that there were crystal statues on the stone arms. No, they were not crystal statues, but pieces of crystals. Inside the crystals, there were living beings sealed. They were like crystal coffins. The stone arms were sunken in and embedded with pieces of crystals. There were living beings sealed in them. These living beings had their eyes closed and their faces were serene. The most important thing was that the appearance of these living beings was very strange. They looked similar to the human race, but their hair was very different from that of the human race. The hair of these living beings was not like that of the human race, which had tens of thousands of strands. They only had thousands of strands of hair, and each strand of hair was much thicker than that of the human race. Moreover, their hair looked like beams of light, flowing with multicolored light. It was incomparably strange. What race is this? Everyone revealed a curious look, because in the universe, they had never heard of such a race. No one knew. The canyon continued to extend forward. No one knew how long it was. On the stone arms on both sides of the canyon, there were many living beings sealed in these crystals. At a glance, there were no less than thousands of them. Crack! At this moment, some of the crystals actually emitted cracking sounds and cracks appeared. Everyone's heart skipped a beat. Why did these crystals crack? There's also a crystal crack here. There's also one in this direction. Many people spoke nervously. In fact, there were not many crystals that cracked. There were only a dozen of them. More and more cracks appeared on these crystals. In the end, the crystals fell off one by one, and the living beings inside the crystals were completely exposed in front of everyone. Swish! Suddenly, one of the creatures in the crystals suddenly opened his eyes. His eyes shone with a resplendent light. At the same time, his long hair, which was like a beam of light, began to dance wildly. Then, like a sharp sword, it pierced towards the creature closest to him. The living beings closest to him were from the heavenly human race. Poof! Poof! Two of the heavenly human race were caught off guard and were directly hit. The light beam of hair pierced through their bodies, and hundreds of holes appeared on their bodies. Then, with a flick of the hair, the two heavenly human race experts' bodies were torn into pieces. The two heavenly human race experts' cultivation levels were not weak. Their cultivation levels were at the 8th level of the Divine Master realm, but they could not resist at all. How dare you trespass into the territory of my race? Kill without mercy! That strange living being shouted. His voice was dry and stiff as if he had not spoken for countless years. However, everyone could hear that it was filled with killing intent. Swish! His body rushed out and charged toward the heavenly human race experts. All of you back off. Leave this person to me. A 9th-level Divine Master Realm expert of the heavenly human race stepped forward. The golden spear in his hand stabbed out hundreds of times in an instant. That strange living being continued to attack with his light beam of hair. It was like thousands of sharp swords piercing toward the heavenly human race experts. Clang! 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 Both sides collided thousands of times in an instant. Then, a figure rapidly retreated. It was the heavenly human race expert. He vomited large mouthfuls of blood, and several bloody holes appeared on his body. His eyes were filled with shock. What powerful combat strength! The others were shocked. Chapter 4795. Everyone was shocked. They could sense that the creature that came out of the crystal was also a 9th-level Divine Master, the same level as the heavenly human. However, the heavenly human was completely defeated. This creature's combat strength was astonishing. It completely suppressed the heavenly human. Lu Ming couldn't help but think of the creature in the dark pit Demon Mountain. It completely suppressed the heavenly human. Similarly, they came from the most terrifying forbidden land. Kill! The being sealed in the crystal coldly bellowed, his killing intent chilling. Thousands of strands of hair danced in the air like thousands of sharp swords as they continued to attack the human 9th Heaven Divine Lord, wanting to kill him completely. The other heavenly human naturally wouldn't let it do as it wished. On the side, a peak Divine Master from the heavenly human race stepped forward, holding the heavenly sword in his hand. He slashed out a dense swordlight, blocking the other party's sword-like hair and pushing it back. However, the crystal-like creature's killing intent became even stronger. It roared and continued to attack the peak Divine Master from the heavenly human race. The two were extremely fast and exchanged dozens of blows in an instant. Although the creature in the crystal seal was at a complete disadvantage, it was difficult for the peak Divine Master from the heavenly human race to kill it. Crack! Asterisk crack! Asterisk at this time, the other crystals had also shattered. The creatures inside all opened their eyes, and the light strands on their heads danced wildly. Then, these creatures charged toward the heavenly human race, the quasi-saint race, and the heaven destroyer. The hair pierced through the void like swords, making ear-piercing whistling sounds as it pierced toward the experts of the three forces. The terrifying power made everyone's expression change. There were definitely terrifying experts among them. The top experts of the three forces were the first to attack. For example, the exterminating Lord of Heaven of the heavenly human race, the Lord of Heaven of the 100 battles, the leader of the quasi-saint race, Lu Ming of the Heaven Destroyer, and the Bone Demon. Lu Ming swept out with the War God Spear. and a spear light instantly enveloped the 5 creatures sealed in the crystal seal. The spear light collided with the thousands of strands of hair. How strong was Lu Ming? Even though the creatures sealed in the crystals were very strong, there was still a big gap between them and Lu Ming. The light beam like hair was swept by the spear light and trembled violently. Some of them even exploded. Several miserable cries sounded. 2 of the weaker creatures' bodies exploded, dying on the spot. The other 3 were also coughing up blood. Their light beam like hair had dimmed. The strongest existences at the level of the Lord of Heaven were too strong. They crushed their opponents as soon as they made a move. On the other side, the celestial race and the quasi-sage race were about the same. The strongest Lord of Heaven level experts defeated their opponents as soon as they made a move. Some of the weaker ones were killed immediately. Retreat. The remaining creatures sealed in the crystal were very decisive. Their bodies were like lightning as they charged into the depths of the canyon. However, their eyes were extremely cold and filled with cold-killing intent. Chase after them. The soul-grade divine medicine is most likely in the depths of the canyon. The Lord of Heaven of 100 Battles shouted, and took the lead to chase. The people of the celestial race quickly followed. The people of the quasi-sage race also quickly followed. Lu Ming, what should we do? Someone in the Heaven Destroyer asked Lu Ming. The Heaven Destroyer at the scene naturally followed Lu Ming's lead. Lu Ming frowned slightly. He had a bad premonition, mainly because he thought of the Dark Pit Demon Mountain. It was also the most terrifying forbidden area, but there were strange creatures. This was no small matter. In addition, there were many crystals here, and each crystal sealed a living being. Since some of the living beings were still alive, what about the other living beings? However, since they had come here, they were unwilling to give up just like that. Let's go in and take a look. If the situation is not right, retreat immediately. Lu Ming instructed. Then, Lu Ming took the lead and rushed into the depths of the canyon. However, the deeper they went into the canyon, the more serious the expressions of Lu Ming and the others became. Because the stone arms on both sides of the canyon were inlaid with that kind of crystal. Along the way, they had already seen tens of thousands of them. At this time, the speed of the people of the celestial race and quasi-sage race was also getting slower and slower, because their hearts were also heavy, and they were also a little scared. Suddenly everyone stopped, because in front of the canyon, the creatures sealed in the crystal appeared again. It was still the same ones who had escaped before, but at this time, they were not afraid at all and blocked in front of everyone. How dare you kill my people, die? One of the creatures sealed in the crystal said coldly. Then, more than a dozen creatures sealed in the crystal appeared behind them. These creatures had long hair fluttering in the wind, and their bodies seemed to be transparent, emitting a dazzling light. Swoosh, 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 their bodies shot out explosively toward the crowd. The light beams pierced through the void and pierced toward the quasi-sage race and the celestial race at an astonishing speed, and even the Heaven Destroyer. Among them, there were a few whose attack speed was too fast. It was so fast that it was almost impossible for people to react. Continuous screams were heard. People from the celestial race, quasi-sage race, and Heaven Destroyer were all killed. At least a dozen people died in an instant. The Heaven Destroyer's situation was slightly better. They were the least killed because they were at the back. Damn it! The Lord of Heaven of 100 Battles shouted angrily and attacked those creatures with all his strength, but he was blocked by a creature sealed in the crystal. In an instant, the two of them exchanged more than 100 moves, but there was no winner. An expert on the level of the strongest Lord of Heaven. Everyone's heart trembled. Among these creatures, there was actually an existence on the level of the strongest Lord of Heaven. This was a little terrifying. Previously, many people were not afraid because they had an existence on the level of the strongest Lord of Heaven by their side. In the era where origin energy did not appear, they were almost invincible. Even if the other party's origin was mysterious, they were not afraid. But now they were a little scared because the other party also had an expert on the level of the strongest. In fact, there was not only one expert on the level of the strongest, but 3. There was also one expert on the quasi-sage race's side. Lu Ming's side was also attacked by an expert on the level of the strongest. However, before Lu Ming could make a move, Bone Demon had already charged out and clashed with the other party. The dozen or so creatures sealed in the crystals that had appeared later were all top-notch experts. Aside from the three who possessed the battle prowess of the strongest Heaven Lord, the other dozen or so were all at the peak of the Divine Master realm. However, these creatures were too strong. Although they were all peak Divine Masters, their fighting strength completely suppressed the celestial race. Even if the strongest Lord of Heaven wanted to kill them, it would not be that easy. Therefore, the threat of more than 10 peak Divine Masters was still very big. Bang! Lu Ming's spear struck a mysterious creature at the peak of the almighty level. The other party's body exploded with a loud bang. However, it did not die. Instead, it turned into rays of light and retreated a distance before it gathered together again. What a powerful soul! Lu Ming's eyes narrowed slightly. Chapter 4796. If a living being in the primitive universe was hit by Lu Ming's spear, the violent power would definitely tear their body and soul apart. However, although the body of the living being sealed in the crystal was shattered by Lu Ming, its soul was not completely torn apart. It was preserved and quickly retreated to reform its body. Of course, it was impossible for the other party to be completely unharmed. No matter how strong its soul was, it had suffered a great deal of damage from the previous attack. The light on its hair and body dimmed, and its aura was much weaker. Although the living beings sealed in the crystal were very strong, there were too few of them. On the other hand, the heavenly human race, the quasi-saint race, and the Heaven Destroyer had a total of more than 400 people. Even if the strongest Lord of Heaven was a few times stronger, there were still close to 10 of them. Therefore, when the two sides exchanged blows, the living beings sealed in the crystal were completely defeated and retreated one after another. At this moment, in the depths of the canyon, there was a violent sound of something breaking through the air. More living beings sealed in the crystal had arrived. At the same time, behind Lu Ming's group, there were also dozens of living beings sealed in the crystal. Crack, crack. On the stone walls on both sides, there were continuous cracking sounds. Cracks appeared on many crystals, and the crystals began to explode. This was shocking. Could it be that the living beings sealed in the crystal were all alive? If so, how many living beings were sealed in the crystal on both sides of the canyon? How many were there in the depths of the canyon? Most importantly, they had only explored one area of the primordial holy mountain. Were there any more living beings in the other areas? If more living beings with the strength of the strongest Lord of Heaven appeared, all three sides would be in danger. Moreover, no one could guarantee that there would not be more living beings with the strength of the strongest Lord of Heaven. After all, living beings were mysterious and unfathomable. They were completely unknown to everyone. It was not impossible for any kind of living beings to appear. If a living being with the strength of Gu Changfeng appeared, few of them would be able to escape. Retreat. Lu Ming made a prompt decision. He shouted and quickly retreated with Heaven Destroyer's men. If he was alone, it would be better with Bone Demon and Qiuqiu's help. However, since he was leading a team this time, he had to be responsible for the 100 or so people under him. Lu Ming took the lead and joined forces with Qiuqiu to launch a fierce attack. All kinds of attacks poured out toward the dozens of creatures sealed in the crystal. Fortunately, although there were 5 or 6 peak divine masters among the several dozen crystal creatures behind them, none of them had battle prowess at the level of the Lord of Heaven. Lu Ming and Qiuqiu's combined attacks immediately opened up a path. Heaven Destroyer's men took the opportunity to charge out, while Bone Demon was in charge of bringing up the rear. After fighting for a while, the people of Heaven Destroyer successfully broke out of the encirclement and quickly rushed out of the canyon. Damn it! The people of Heavenly Human Tribe and Quasi-Sage Tribe roared in their hearts. They were very unwilling to accept this. However, Heaven Destroyer's men left first. Without Heaven Destroyer's restraint, the creatures sealed in the crystal rushed toward them, causing the pressure on them to increase sharply. Moreover, many crystals around them were constantly cracking. If this continued, it would be very dangerous. No matter how unwilling they were, they could only retreat first. Retreat! Retreat! The people of Heavenly Human Tribe and Quasi-Sage Tribe shouted and rushed toward the exit of the canyon. After paying a price, they finally broke out of the encirclement and quickly rushed toward the exit. Soon, the two tribes successfully rushed out of the canyon. They didn't dare to stay and rushed outside. The creatures sealed in the crystal chased them to the entrance of the canyon and stopped. It won't be long before my tribe reappears in the world. At that time, the void universe of the untainted land will be my tribe's world. A cold voice reverberated at the entrance of the canyon. In the distance, Lu Ming and the others also heard this voice. Void universe of the untainted land? What does that mean? Also, what kind of tribe are these? They're so terrifying. Why are they hiding in this terrifying forbidden area? Why didn't the void beasts attack them? Many people were discussing spiritedly. They had a lot of questions that couldn't be answered. Perhaps the four void beasts are there to protect these creatures? Someone said, but his voice was trembling. Many people's hearts trembled. If it was true, it would be shocking. What was the origin of these creatures? Lu Ming also frowned. He had a lot of doubts in his heart. He asked Bone Demon, but Bone Demon was also puzzled because this was also beyond his scope of understanding. Because after the beginning of the new era, no creatures had appeared in these terrifying forbidden areas. Could it be that they were really the terrifying creatures of the untainted land of the previous era, who had sealed themselves until now? Let's go back first. Lu Ming said. This place was not suitable to stay for long. It gave people a sense of crisis. They flew toward the outside of the continent. Not long after, they completely left this continent and rushed toward the Heaven Destroyer's encampment. This trip, except for a few divine herbs, was a wasted trip. To be honest, Lu Ming was a little disappointed. He had hoped to get enough primordial crystals this time to improve his cultivation. It seemed that he wouldn't be so lucky every time. Not long after, they returned to the Heaven Destroyer's encampment. Lu Ming told Lion, Rongjin, and the others in detail what he saw and heard at the primordial divine mountain. After hearing this, the upper echelons of the Heaven Destroyer were also stunned. Things were beyond their expectations. At the same time, the upper echelons of the Heaven Destroyer ordered that the primordial divine mountain be listed as a forbidden area again. The people of the Heaven Destroyer were not allowed to get close. Let's ask Zixian and the others. Lu Ming planned to ask Zixian and the others. A few days later, Lu Ming arrived at the demon's territory. Now, the four demon royal families had put aside their past grievances and joined forces to develop. They knew very well that after many battles during this period, the demons had suffered heavy losses. If they didn't join forces, they would definitely be wiped out by the heavenly human race. Only by joining forces could they protect themselves. The demons' current encampment was in the Yinshu Demon Castle. Lu Ming met Zixian, Yin Kong, Jiao Du, and the others in the Yinshu Demon Castle. Lu Ming told them what he saw at the Yinshu Demon Mountain and the Primordial Divine Mountain. After hearing this, Zixian, Yin Kong, Jiao Du, and the others looked at each other with serious expressions. Never would I have thought. I truly never would have thought that the rumors were true. There are actually terrifying creatures living in these forbidden areas. Zixian muttered to herself, her eyes full of surprise. Zixian, do you know about these forbidden areas? Lu Ming asked hurriedly. There are some records in some of the oldest books of the demons. It is said that these forbidden areas already existed in the primeval age of the last era. Zixian said. What? They already existed in the last era? Lu Ming was shocked. Chapter 4797. That's right. According to the ancient records, these forbidden grounds existed in the primeval continent of the last epoch. Moreover, they were still forbidden grounds in the primeval continent. They were extremely dangerous and anyone who entered would die. Even the Almighty of the primeval continent would be in great danger if they entered. They could die at any time. According to the ancient records, many almighty beings died in the forbidden grounds during the primeval continent. There were even transcendents among them. Zixian explained. Yin Kong, Jiao Du, and the others nodded. Their faces were extremely solemn. Lu Ming felt a chill in his heart. This had exceeded his expectations. These forbidden grounds had existed for far longer than he had imagined. They were actually terrifying forbidden grounds in the primeval continent of the last epoch. In fact, even transcendents would perish if they entered. This was too terrifying. Transcendents were called immortals. They were above the universe. The universe could be destroyed, but they could not be destroyed. They were extremely powerful and unparalleled. Compared to transcendence, origin realm experts were like fireflies compared to the moon. This was because there was a transitional realm between origin realm and transcendence. This realm was filled with trials and tribulations. Only by overcoming these trials could one reach transcendence. Even such terrifying experts would die in there. This was how dangerous these forbidden grounds were. Lu Ming could not help but feel lucky. He was really lucky to be completely fine when he entered the primeval divine mountain last time. Or perhaps, these forbidden grounds had changed in the new epoch, and were no longer as dangerous as before? What are the origins of these creatures in the forbidden grounds? Are some powerful races from the primeval continent living there? Lu Ming asked. I'm not too sure. The ancient records of my race are very limited. Zixian shook her head. After all, it's been far too long. Many ancient records have been lost. Moreover, the ancestors of my race also participated in the war at the end of the primeval continent and died in the end. There are too many records that have been lost. There are only a few words about these forbidden grounds. There aren't too many details. Ying Kong added. Lu Ming was slightly disappointed. He originally thought that he could learn more about the creatures in the forbidden grounds from the demons. This doesn't seem right. There was a great war at the end of the last epoch. The primeval continent collapsed and formed a destructive force. Didn't they say that even transcendence died? How could these forbidden grounds be preserved? Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat. He had the same question and asked. Legend had it that the destructive force formed from the collapse of the primeval continent swept across the entire universe. The peak experts of the primeval continent died. Then why were these forbidden grounds preserved? Could it be that these forbidden grounds were even more stable and powerful than the top experts of the desolate continent? There are exceptions to everything. Of the heavenly human race, Zixian said. Of the transcendence. To the transcendence. Or they. Those peak experts' transcendence. Were transcendence. Just. It. Zixian paused for a moment before continuing. Lu Ming's heart trembled. Indeed. It was just a guess. There was no real evidence to prove that the peak experts of the primeval continent were all dead. However, after that battle, those top experts from the previous era had all disappeared without a trace. Later generations believed that they had most likely perished together when the prehistoric continent collapsed. However, if those forbidden grounds could be preserved, the peak experts of the primeval continent and the transcendence might have survived. Lu Ming, in short, those forbidden lands are too scary. Don't provoke the living creatures in those forbidden lands. Try not to provoke them. Zixian warned with a serious face. If they don't provoke me, I won't provoke them. But I'm afraid, Lu Ming said. He paused, but everyone knew what he meant. Sometimes, even if you don't provoke others, they will provoke you. Indeed, Zixian, Ying Kong, Jiao Du and the others sighed. Their faces were a little pale. The creatures of the forbidden grounds appeared suddenly. They must have bad intentions. Ying Kong said. Indeed, we have to be prepared. However, according to Lu Ming, it seems that only a small number of the living creatures in the Forbidden Land can move about. I speculate that these living creatures are not living creatures of the present. Instead, they have been preserved from the distant past. They should have used some special means to seal themselves. There are some conditions to unseal them, Zixian said. Zixian, Ying Kong, Jiao Du and the others were all smart people who could lead the royal families during the origin tribulation. They could speculate a lot with just a little information. Lu Ming nodded. Zixian and the other speculations were the same as Lu Ming's. In the extreme Yuan Forbidden Ground, there were many creatures sealed in the crystals, but only a few of them were unsealed. The rest were still sleeping in the crystals. Even if they escaped, the other party did not chase after them. Also, there were only a few creatures in the Dark Pit Demon Mountain. After they retreated, the other party did not chase after them. From these aspects, the other party should not have many people now. Perhaps there were some conditions to be met if they wanted to unseal the crystals. Lu Ming discussed with Zixian and the others for a while before leaving. After returning to the Heaven Destroyer Station, He discussed with Lion and the others for a while. After knowing that Lu Ming had obtained the information from the demons, Lion and the others were more cautious. They evacuated the people around the extreme Yuan Forbidden Ground and gave up the territory around the extreme Yuan Sacred Ground. The heavenly human tribe and the quasi-immortal tribe also seemed to be very cautious about these forbidden grounds. In the following days, their people also stayed away from these forbidden grounds and did not dare to approach. In this way, the universe ushered in a short period of peace. The various forces did not fight. Time flew by and hundreds of years passed. At this time 1,500 years had passed since the origin tribulation began. After hundreds of years, the dark yin qi that filled the dark pit demon mountain became wider and wider. Finally, it enveloped the entire universe. From then on, the universe was completely reduced to a world full of dark yin qi. The creatures in the universe either fled to the ruins of the universe or became dark yin qi monsters. Not long after the dark yin qi enveloped the universe, a series of beast roars came from the dark pit demon mountain. An army rushed out of the pit. All of them were creatures of the dark pit demon mountain. There were about 2,000 of them. They led a large number of dark yin qi monsters to invade the ruins of the universe. The invasion of the creatures of the extreme Yuan Forbidden Ground into the ruins of the universe caused the entire universe to shake. All the forces were nervously watching. And the closest to the universe was the heavenly palace controlled by the heavenly human tribe.